Hello everyone, my name is Delicacy, and this is Video Delicacies, where we seek to taste the greatest flavors that old games have to offer. I just played Fragile Dreams, Farewell Ruins of the Moon, which was developed by tri-Crescendo along with Bandai Namco, and published by Xseed. It was released exclusively for the Nintendo Wii in 2009. I've owned a copy of the game since 2010, the year that it was released here in North America, but I only played about an hour of it in all that time. I have this bad habit of playing games exactly once. I've wanted to get back to this one forever, and it seemed like a perfect candidate for this series, so why not do it now? I played this game on my Wii U. I want to give a heads up that this game deals a lot with loss and grieving, so this video is going to be a bit heavier than usual. Fragile Dreams is played using a Wii remote and nunchuck. You use the nunchuck's analog stick to move the protagonist, Seto. You also have a cursor which you control by pointing the Wii remote. By pressing the B button, you can enter a first-person search view which follows the cursor. While in this mode, the Wii remote will vibrate slightly when your cursor is over something with which you can interact, which you do by pressing the A button. The game began by letting me explore an observatory. There is a bit of world building here where Seto is unable to identify a CRT. Clearly he's not a melee player. Upstairs, I could see fireflies indicating the presence of a collectible item. I made my way across the telescope, and the item turned out to be a flashlight. Once this was equipped, Seto would point it in the direction of the cursor. Adjoining the observatory was a library. There was a cute cat running around inside, but they wouldn't let me get close to them. In the back of the library, a scary mask appeared. You can press the A button to swing the weapon in Seto's left hand. With proper timing, you can do a string of up to 3 hits. After taking enough damage, the mask fled, refusing to answer any questions. Just after that, I found a letter from Seto's guardian, an old man whose name he never learned. The old man left behind a very personal message about how he felt that his life was wasted, and about how important Seto was to him. He left instructions for Seto to head east to a tall red tower where he might find other survivors. After leaving the observatory behind, Seto came across a person singing about the moon. I knew from the manual that her name was Ren, though the game itself didn't reveal this information until much later. Ren was startled by his sudden appearance and fell, seemingly hitting her head on the sidewalk. It looked incredibly painful, but she played it off like she was fine. She was more scared of Seto than she was concerned about her likely concussion, and so she ran off without introducing herself. Attempting to follow her, Seto descended the stairs into a subway station. If someone ran away from me in fear the first time we met, I would not be looking forward to seeing that person ever again, but Seto is a child and he has the self-awareness of one. There's a lot of Japanese text in the environment throughout the game, but when looking at it in search view, a translation will sometimes helpfully appear on the screen. Some text here identified this place as Azabudai Station. As you may have already guessed based on the red tower mentioned earlier, this game's setting is loosely based on real-world Minato. Further ahead, Seto heard a voice, but it wasn't the voice of the singer. This voice played through the speaker on the Wii remote, or at least it would have. I disabled the remote speaker in the settings menu prior to starting the game, so it just played through the TV speakers as normal for me. Following the voice, I had to press the C button to crouch through a tight space. I found my way into an office where I found the source of the voice, a machine called PF. PF explained that she specialized in analyzing situations, and her current analysis was that she was concerned about Seto's safety. Her scan informed her that there was a weapon nearby, so I set out to find it. Inside the station's restroom was a bamboo sword, an upgrade over the stick that the game started me with. When I left the restroom, I learned that the area was haunted by what PF called malicious thought entities. The tutorial also called them ghosts. Jellies are one of my favorite animals, so I liked their design a lot. In order to damage these ghosts, I needed to keep my flashlight pointed at them before swinging my sword. You can rest at bonfires found throughout the game in order to recover lost HP, save the game, and access item storage. But you can also use them to view memories attached to certain items that you collect, like this paper crane.
So, dear, what do you want to play next?
I know! Hide and go seek!
You really do love playing hide and go seek, don't you?
Yep, and I like apples and running races too.
Oh, really? But you always come in last place in races.
Yeah, but I still like them, and I love Mommy best.
And Mommy loves you too.
I made my way to a second restroom, which proved more dangerous than the first, with arms reaching out at me from the mirrors. This was one of the few scary moments in the game, but I was brave, and I found a key leading to the surface next to one of the toilets. Before I had the chance to use it, however, I was stopped by an eccentric merchant wearing an enormous chicken mask. Seto explained that he didn't have anything with which to barter, but the merchant gave him a healing candy drop for free anyway. This was the first of many different healing items in the game. It only took up one square of my inventory, but stronger healing items that I would get later would sometimes be larger. Down at the train platform, I was attacked by some wild dogs. I didn't want to hurt them, but I defended myself when attacked, causing Seto to level up. Leveling up increases Seto's HP and the amount of damage done by his attacks. I went through some train cars and from there out to the surface. The sky here was absolutely beautiful. This game in general is very pretty anytime you're somewhere that isn't covered in darkness. Alongside the train tracks, there was a storehouse. Inside was the ghost of a child who wanted to play hide and go seek. This is probably a regional thing, but to me, this game is simply called hide and seek, though this localization consistently calls it hide and go seek. To find the child, I had to follow the sound of her voice the same way that I followed PFs in the station. Once I found her 3 times, she gave me a key as a reward. In return, Seto gave her the paper crane from earlier, which allowed her to reunite with her mother. Unlike the child, who looked like a fully detailed human, however, the mother was merely a white silhouette, so I wondered if that was really the mother or something else, like a projection of the child's memories. In any case, it seemed to bring her peace. While walking back to the station, I encountered another cat. Like the one at the library, they didn't appreciate me trying to approach. "I just wanted to get a better look at you, sorry." I retraced my steps all the way back to that shutter with the name of the station on it. Using the key that I got from the ghost child, I was able to enter the station's mall. At a bonfire, I was approached by the merchant who was selling a cat toy. I really wanted that, but I had 0 yen to my name, so I sold a healing candy for 160 yen and used 30 of it to buy the toy. There were some cats there in the mall who I tried it out on, but it was kind of unsatisfying, because Seto would put his flashlight down anytime that I used the toy, making it very difficult to actually see the cats playing. I then found another cat toy just sitting around for free, further increasing my buyer's remorse. In that same room, I was attacked by several pairs of legs. This was a frustrating encounter because there was no fast way to turn around in this game. To rotate the camera, you have to move the cursor all the way to the edge of the screen and then wait for it to turn. Then you have to move the cursor back to the center in order to aim at enemies. It's clunky. The mall was the first large area of the game. There were a lot of dead ends and side rooms to explore, and I found a number of different memory items here. One that stood out to me was this game cartridge that contained a kid's memory of getting emotionally invested in a video game character who they had named Ah. The further that I went into the mall, the more decrepit it was. There were some cracked floors that would collapse if I walked over them too quickly, dealing 50 damage each time I fell. The bamboo sword that I had been using this entire time finally broke here. As far as I know, there's no way of telling how much damage a weapon has sustained, so I always carried at least one backup on me. Fortunately, shortly after my sword broke, an enemy dropped an onyx worth 6,000 yen. For the first time in the game, I had actual money to work with, so I bought a new sword the next time that I encountered the merchants. By the time that I finally reached the end of the mall, PF's battery was failing. At first, I thought that I would just need to look for a place to recharge her, but then the scene kept going. Her death really took me by surprise. I had expected to see her attached to Seto's back for the rest of the game, but now she was gone and Seto was all alone again. He kept one of her screws to remember her by, and then buried her.
I know that no matter how badly I wish to see you again, that can never be. Those who live must continue to live. Those who are dead will only continue to stay dead in the cold, hard earth.
By the way, the North American release of Fragile Dreams includes the option of playing with either an English dub or the original Japanese audio. This is a really great feature that was less common back then than it is today. For the sake of this video, I chose the English voice track, and I found it to be pretty solid. Seto is voiced by Johnny Young Bosch, who is probably best known in the video game world for playing the Persona 4 protagonist. In Japanese, though, Seto is voiced by legendary voice actress Hoko Kuwashima. That's a name that I recognized because she voiced two of my favorite anime characters ever, Yurika from Martian Successor Nadeshiko, and Cure Sunshine from Heartcatch Precure. She's acted in a ton of different anime, but her video game credits are endless too, and include Isara from Valkyria Chronicles, and Elma from Xenoblade X. I kind of regret playing it in English now. The next location in the game was my favorite one, Lunar Hill Funland. Upon entering this area, Seto met a mysterious character named Crow. Crow was very brusque towards Seto, insulting his name, telling him not to act like they were friends, and interrogating him about his past. Crow implied that he wasn't human, and then stole Seto's locket and ran off. After the cutscene, I found a small bag which increased the size of my inventory from 4x3 to 4x4, a much welcome upgrade. I really liked the inclusion of this grid-based inventory system. It's nothing new to the genre, but it was fun for me to manage. I then set out to explore the Funland. There were many amusement park attractions here, but none of them were operational. I could hear Crow's voice in various locations, and by following it, I would find a taunting message from him. I had to do this in all three areas of the park to advance. One thing that was starting to stand out was that you fight a lot of dogs in this game. Personally, I'm a cat person, but I took no joy in hurting these animals. This may have been the game's intended reaction, as I found a collar near some of them that contained a very sad memory of a dog struggling to encourage their depressed human. Dogs weren't the only hostile animals here. I was attacked by birds for the first time, and they were the most challenging enemies that I had encountered yet. I tried switching my weapon to a butterfly net that I had found earlier. I imagined that the net would swing overhead like the one in Ape Escape, allowing me to hit these flying enemies, but it was actually a thrusting weapon. It wasn't much better against the birds than my sword had been. While fighting a second group of birds, I gamed over for the first time and I was forced to reload my last save. Once I had found all three graffiti from Crow, he left a message inviting Seto to meet him at the merry-go-round. But after meeting him there, he just ran off again. I got a tutorial about how to catch him, but I think reading the tutorial took me longer than actually doing it did. I just had to fake right and then go around to the left. Easy. Crow got away again, and I caught up to him in some tall grass. This section was a little harder. I needed to hide in the teacup ride until he forgot that I was there and then sneak up on him. My first few tries were not working out. I was worried that maybe he was seeing the light from my flashlight, but there was no way to turn the flashlight off, so I tried sneaking up while keeping the cursor pointed away from him. Luckily, that wasn't actually what I needed to do. My problem was just that I wasn't being fast enough. You need to crouch to hide in the teacup, but once Crow looks away, you can stand up immediately and you'll have enough time to run straight at him. It took me a little while, but I eventually figured it out. By the way, there was no music for large stretches of this game, so the music that there was really stood out. What you're hearing right now is the music that played during these minigames. It was one of my favorites. Crow escaped yet again, and I caught up to him on a bridge. Seto told Crow that the locket contained the memories of everyone he'd ever known. Crow got curious and decided to take a look inside, where he found PF's screw, among other things. He challenged Seto to follow him on the tracks of a roller coaster, leading to one of the game's most memorable set pieces. There's a real fairy tale quality to this part. Crow is like a cunning fox luring our naive hero into an obvious trap. Gameplay-wise, the roller coaster was pretty straightforward. If I approached the edge, Seto would start to stumble, but there was plenty of time to react to prevent him from falling. There were ladders that led to scaffolding that I could use to bypass broken parts of the track and find items. There were also a lot of birds flying around, but I knew by this point that birds were trouble, so I just walked past them rather than trying to fight. Mostly I remember this part of the game for being visually breathtaking. I love the Aurora Borealis-like sky, the bright crescent moon, and the Ferris wheel in the distance. Upon reaching the end of the roller coaster, I ran into the merchant. He periodically stocked new wares, and on this occasion I was allowed to purchase an iron pipe, which is a stronger version of the sword. Crow was waiting up ahead. He had predictably set up a pitfall, which Seto fell directly into. This led to an employee area underneath the park. Here I found a very enlightening book. It was about a young pirate whose dialogue had seemingly served as the basis for Crow's entire personality. In the end, it was revealed that despite his bullying, the pirate had seen the book's protagonist as a friend all along. Once I made my way out of the underground area, I had what I guess I would call the first boss fight of the game. It was a rematch against the mask creature from the beginning. I equipped my iron pipe and just wailed on it. It never even had the chance to fight back. By the way, Seto's health is the vertical cyan bar in the top left, and during boss fights, the enemy's health is displayed as a green bar in the top right. Seto climbed up the face of the Ferris wheel to confront Crow, who was dancing around and taunting, but he missed a step and suddenly went tumbling down. He managed to toss the locket to Seto just before crashing into the top of the merry-go-round. It seemed for sure that he was dead, but once he heard Seto crying, he was up and acting like he was perfectly fine. Maybe he wasn't bluffing when he said that he wasn't human. The two boys had a bonding moment together, where Crow showed Seto a photograph from his past. Then Seto asked Crow if they'd ever see each other again. Crow said that they're friends, and gave Seto a skull-shaped ring to remember him by. And before Seto could say thank you, he went for the kiss.
What's wrong? We're friends now, and friends give each other kisses, right? I read that.
But that was my first kiss ever!
Oh. Huh. Well, then I guess that makes me your #1 buddy. Best friends, right?
My best friend? Yeah. We're friends now.
You bet.
Let's take a moment to talk about the various boxes of Fragile Dreams Farewell Ruins of the Moon, shall we? First, I'd like to look at the North American version. I like the choice of depicting Seto holding a golf club. The strongest sword-type weapon in the game is an actual katana, but the golf club is right below that. That's a charming enough aspect of the game that I think it's smart to put it on the cover. I'm less keen on the reflection imagery. I think that they're trying to convey that though Seto and Ren are not in the same place, Ren is who motivates Seto, and that's a hard idea to get across visually. But the choice of a reflection specifically feels misleading to me. If I knew nothing about this game, I might assume that these two characters were the same person, or maybe that Ren is like a spirit inside of Seto or something. Overall, it's a very pretty cover. I'm just nitpicking here. In Japan, this game's title is not Fragile Dreams, but simply Fragile. Also, the subtitle is in Japanese, but it has the same meaning as the English one. The art used for the box is the same art that appears on the game's title screen. Here we have Seto and Ren in the same place, with the tower in the reflection. I have no complaints about this cover. I think it's spectacular. I like how both characters look here, and arranging the vertical logo parallel with the tower in the background is a really nice touch. Something went wrong with the PAL box. It's basically the same as the Japanese one, but they covered up the tower with the English logo and then put this blurry gray mess under it as if to cover up their crime. I like it the least of the three. At Crow's suggestion, I headed to the next area, the Kurato Hotel. Night had turned to day, so I was finally able to enjoy playing with cats in the light. The hotel was the largest location that I had been able to explore up to this point. There were a lot of different rooms, but they all managed to look distinct. I was really impressed by how well these environments were decorated. In one of the guest rooms, I encountered a new type of ghost that could only be damaged when the eye on its back opened. The game doesn't assign names to any of the enemies you fight. This kind of makes sense because Seto wouldn't know what to call these things either, but having names for them would have made talking about the game a lot easier. The hotel apparently used to be a wedding venue. There were several memory items that told stories of weddings taking place here, or perhaps they were all about the same wedding from different perspectives. There was another ongoing story unfolding in memory items at this point too. There were several fragments of a torn-up drawing that contained the history of a girl who loved dancing and a boy who loved flowers. It was a really cool part of this game, but too long and too peripheral for me to really go into. On the third floor, I fought a mask, which posed only slightly more of a threat than the previous one. That gave me a key to a room where Seto found a young woman, and her dead body. She was surprised to see that there was still a living human. Her name was Sai. Sai was bored, so she decided to follow Seto around for a while. He kindly put a blanket over her body to keep it warm, and then the two of them were off. A little later, the pair ran into a ghost child who wanted a star and a moon. I learned later that her name was Chiyo. Sai suggested that the star that Chiyo was talking about might be the one on the Christmas tree back at Azabudai Station. There was a shortcut from a stairwell in the hotel down into the station, so I didn't have to go all the way back through the park to get there, but there was still a lot of backtracking to do. This might be a good time to point out that the movement in this game is fairly slow. It's usually not very noticeable when exploring areas for the first time, but at moments like this where it's necessary to backtrack a long distance, it can get a little boring. I arrived at the Christmas tree, and there was no star there. Instead, I found a special flashlight called the Special Flashlight, which would reveal messages left behind by ghosts. I followed these through the mall to a room where 3 of those back-facing enemies were waiting. This was actually a challenging fight for once. I ultimately ended up using a broom, which is a thrusting weapon like the butterfly net. Its reach let me attack the ghosts while staying out of harm's way. After defeating all 3 ghosts, I was able to retrieve the star. The moon was back at Lunar Hill Funland. It was only a few minutes away from the hotel, so it was much quicker to get the moon than it was the star. After that, Chiyo then wanted me to look for her ring, which she had lost in the hotel restaurant. Once I got there, I was thrown into a boss fight against a haunted tree. The boss had a weak point on its trunk, and could attack me with either of its branches. I cleaned it up with my broom, and then claimed the ring. When I returned, I learned that Chiyo was the ghost of an old woman who was still breathing. In her final moments, she thanked Seto by giving him her brooch.
And yes, I know. I don't have much time left. But for you, I'm sure there are many tomorrows still waiting. So, you must go on your way. You must live. Live your life. Until you breathe your last breath. Live life to the fullest.
While doing research for this video, I learned that this game had a 6-chapter tie-in manga serialized in Dengeki Mao. It was only published in Japan, but there's an unofficial English translation that's easy to find if you're interested. The manga's run actually ended before the game was released, but it took place after. The plot centered around a talking cat, and Seto learning that it's worth spending time with people even though we'll all be gone someday. In Chapter 3, Seto received a memory from a baseball bat, leading to a whimsical sequence in which he imagined that he was in a pre-apocalypse high school where he played baseball with his classmates, Sai, Crow, and Ren. On the roof of the hotel, Seto and Sai talked about the moon. Then a white cat appeared who I followed to an open manhole. That led down to the next area of the game, Tengen Tunnel. The narrative slowed down a little here as we started to move from the first half of the game toward the conclusion. There weren't any new characters introduced in this area or the next one, at least not on screen anyway. This stretch of the game basically amounted to one giant dungeon that Seto and Sai needed to traverse in order to reach the rest of the plot. Tengen Tunnel began with a long corridor that the save screen literally calls Never-Ending Hallway. At the end of it, I was introduced to a new enemy, this security robot. After that, the corridor opened up into a huge 5-way junction where there was another new enemy, whatever this thing is. The combat was getting a little harder at this point, as enemies could now have projectile attacks. There's no block button or dodge button in this game, so I needed to rely purely on Seto's lethargic movement in order to avoid these. There were again a number of memory items here, including a book series with titles Red Bell Henri, Blue Bell Fleur, Purple Bell Sylvia, Yellow Bell Lot, Orange Bell Bisque, and Silver Bell Chris. These books told stories of a mysterious narrator impersonating people's lost loved ones. Though never said explicitly, it's likely that the loved ones in question are all cats. I adored these little stories, and I was pleasantly surprised that there were so many of them. Remember, every memory item is fully narrated. There's more than a half hour of voice acting contained in these bell books alone. I'm pretty sure that there are 7 of them in all, but I only came across 6 of them. After some exploring, I ran into the white cat again. Once I befriended them using a cat toy, they led me to a place where there were many other cats, and also Ren. She trusted Seto now after seeing his camaraderie with the cats, but she was called away before she could tell Seto her name. The tunnel ended with a boss fight against a giant mole. I would never in a million years have guessed that this game had a giant mole in it, but it was pretty cool. The music here was great. It was sunset by the time that Seto and Sai exited the tunnel. The next area was called Oikawadani Dam. I was disappointed to find that this is not the name of a real-world location. It might have been based on one, but it's hard to pinpoint where this part of the game is intended to take place since we appear to be well outside of the city now. Seto saw Ren in distress and immediately resolved to go rescue her. But this irritated Sai, who was frustrated by how eager Seto was to risk his life. This must be a common feeling for ghosts. Inside the dam, I caught a glimpse of the merchant's true nature. Beneath that oversized chicken head was a robot body. He was the caretaker of an infant child who he called the princess, but it seemed that she had not been alive for quite some time. Ever since, he had been exploring the world in search of toys in hopes that they might cheer her up, but his effort was fruitless. He initially chased Seto out of the room angrily, but a little later he apologized by expanding the size of my inventory to 5x4. This was a cool sequence. I wasn't expecting the merchant to have a backstory at all, let alone one so satisfying. The surrealness of finding a lovingly decorated child's bedroom in the depths of a hydroelectric dam really made it memorable for me. Further into the dam, Seto was reunited with Crow. Unfortunately, their reunion was short. He was dying. In Crow's final moments, Seto reaffirmed their friendship and cried on his shoulder. When I returned to the place where Crow's body was, there was only a black feather there. I love this. After that, I started to be attacked by dolls. These were apparently the same type of being that Crow was, except these ones didn't want to make friends. They couldn't be harmed before, during, or after their attacks, making them kind of difficult to fight, but eventually I learned the timing for when they were vulnerable. At one point, I had to use a bow to shoot at a target in order to open a locked door. Oh yeah, there are bows in this game. You can use search view to aim them in first person. I rarely used bows because they take up a lot of inventory space, and because they can't be used on ghosts since you can't use a bow and a flashlight at the same time. After that was a boss fight against this massive demolition vehicle. This would have been the first time that the game required the use of a ranged weapon if not for the bullseye lock earlier. It was smart to put that lock there so that a player like me who hadn't been using bows would have a chance to practice in a safe environment before being thrown into the fight. The boss alternated between 2 phases. In the Wrecking Ball phase, the weak point was too far away to damage, so I just focused on evasion. During the Rake phase, I just let it hit me while I fired away at it. You can't move while aiming, so this seemed like the most efficient way to get damage in. In an earlier part of the dam, I had found a crossbow, the best ranged weapon in the game, so I used that. After the fight was over, Sai warned Seto that the apocalyptic event that caused the world to be like this was about to happen again, and if it did, it would mean the end for Seto and any other humans who survived it the first time. She elaborated that a group of scientists studying telepathy had created a project called the Glass Cage that they hoped would allow everyone in the world to understand each other without language, and therefore bring about an end to war. Sai was the one selected to be the catalyst for the project. The glass cage connected her heart with the hearts of everyone else on Earth, but once it was activated, everyone who went to sleep never woke back up. Sheen, one of the scientists responsible, was now trying to do that again with Ren as the catalyst, and it was up to Seto to take him to task. So, I already covered the boxes for this game, but as we approach the end, there's one final box that I'd still like to talk to you about. This is the box that belongs to my copy of Fragile Dreams. This is the only game in my collection that has one of these generic GameStop cases, and honestly I kind of hate seeing it next to my other Wii games. But I'll never get rid of it because it was a gift from my mom. My mom didn't like video games very much, but she loved Christmas. The year this game came out, I had it on my wish list. It wasn't a major release, so it was kind of hard to find. She went around to multiple stores looking for it. Eventually, she spoke to a GameStop employee who apparently didn't believe that a game by this title existed. But they looked it up in their system and found that they did have precisely one new copy of the game and even the manual to go with it, but the case for it was nowhere to be found. So that's how I ended up with this ugly eyesore of a box, which nevertheless reminds me that I was loved. Maybe it's strange that it took me so long to play this game when I have this emotional attachment to it as an object, but at least I can say that I've played it now. Sai taught Seto the passcode he needed to enter the glass cage facility. Inside, I fought the final mask of the game, and just past that was Sheen. Sai tried to talk him out of reactivating the project, but he had no interest in listening to her. The interior of the facility looked like a children's hospital. There were rooms for several different kids who were named, but who we don't meet in the story. The final room, however, had no name on the door. It seemed to belong to Ren. There was a memory item here that served as an epilogue to the story that I read all the way back at the hotel, the one about the girl who loved dancing and the boy who loved flowers. Finding this here was unexpectedly emotional for me. I haven't said it yet, but this game is good. Beyond the hospital, there was a series of challenge rooms. The first one was filled with toxic substances, causing Seto's health to decrease over time. I needed to traverse the room quickly, but there were robots in the way slowing me down. Most enemies in the game were pretty easy to run past, but not the robots. On my first try, I got cornered by 2 of them and game overed, but I was able to make it through on my second try. The second challenge room had a bunch of motion sensors scanning it. If one of them passed over me, I needed to stay still. When I got caught, both doors locked and 3 dolls appeared. Once I defeated the dolls, the doors would unlock, but I would be sent back to the start. For me, this was the most difficult room in the game. After fighting the group of dolls a couple of times, I started to just reset anytime I got caught. On my 7th attempt, I was able to make it past the motion sensors undetected. Past that was a scary X'd out door, leading to a room with what looked like blood leaking out of it. On the other side, I found out that the blood was actually just lava lamp juice. That's a relief. Sheen monologued about how humans needed to evolve beyond the need for language, and then a boss fight began. He was usually invulnerable to my attacks, but he would enter a defenseless state after using this attack where he would lob 3 globs at me. I could destroy the globs by attacking them. If I was hit by 1 of them, I took some damage, no big deal, but if I was hit by 2 of them, I'd be knocked down and probably miss the window to attack. By this point, I had stockpiled tons of powerful weapons and healing items, making it an easy fight. Sai stopped Seto from finishing Sheen off, and so he was able to flee. After that, Seto rescued Ren. She was disoriented, but she was able to tell him where he could find Sheen. Naturally, the final location of the game was Tokyo Tower, or as the save screen called it, Twilight Tower. While ascending the stairs, Seto could hear the voices of PF, Chiyo, and Crow encouraging him. There were more robots here too, but they couldn't go down the stairs, making them completely trivial to deal with. This seemed like an oversight. The sky here was beautiful and the moon immense. Sheen was waiting out on the platform. Seto had finally joined up with another human, and he wasn't about to let Sheen end humanity and ruin it for him. The boss battle was essentially the same as the previous one. Sheen did have a new attack, but I only saw him use it once. I waited for the globs, protected myself, and struck back, healing when necessary. Again, it was pretty easy. Seto asked Sheen why he wanted to destroy the world. Sheen explained that he was the first test subject to receive telepathy. Once he did, he learned that all of his colleagues resented him, and he came to believe that humanity as a whole was irredeemably self-centered. Sai rejected Sheen's worldview, and told him that she loved him. Sheen was shocked because he hadn't known this until she said it. The realization that there were emotions that he couldn't understand without language was enough to make him abandon his plan, and then the 2 of them disappeared together. At the base of the tower, Seto and Ren talked about the moon. He finally learned her name, and then the two of them left to search for other survivors together. Completing Fragile Dreams took me 12 hours and 46 minutes, which is right in line with How Long to Beat.com's average. It felt like a good length for this type of game. This video, on the other hand, is starting to go long, so I'll keep my closing thoughts brief. I loved the character designs, and I loved the characters themselves, especially Crow. I loved reading the short stories contained in the memory items, especially the 7 colored bells. I loved the animated sequences, and most of all, I loved the vibes. It's a stylish, moody game that doesn't over-explain itself, and I value all of that pretty highly. I loved basically everything about this game except for actually playing it. It's a shame that Fragile Dreams was never re-released with a more conventional control scheme because the novelty of controlling a flashlight with the Wii remote just wasn't worth the frustration for me. It's a truly special game. I just wish that there was a less aggravating way to experience it. Thank you so very much for watching my video. I do hope that you enjoyed watching it as much as I enjoyed making it. If you did, please let me know by pressing the like button or leaving a comment before you go. Now, where should I rank this game? In my opinion, Fragile Dreams Farewell Ruins of the Moon's only major problem is its controls. Unfortunately, controls are one of the most important things for a game to get right. Playing this game was mildly annoying at all times. Now, playing Star Fox 64 was incredibly annoying some of the time, which I think is worse, so I'll give Fragile Dreams the advantage there. However, as much as I liked it, I can't in good conscience rank this game higher than Spyro the Dragon, a game that controlled excellently. And so Fragile Dreams takes 3rd place, following Spyro and My World My Way. Though rest assured that if I was ranking these on presentation alone, it would be number 1 easily. In my next video, I'll be returning to Sony's very first PlayStation with Spyro 2: Ripto's Rage. I know basically nothing about it, but I liked the first Spyro game when I played it back in episode 1, so I'm excited to try the sequel. I hope to see you back here then.